Hello everybody, this is Yasmin from Yarkspiri and welcome to another illustration video tutorial. So for this week's tutorial, I'm actually working essentially on a complete reversal from last week's tutorial where I did a very stylized, more graphic style of drawing to I'm attempting to do a more hyper-realistic drawing. So the main aim in this drawing was for me to achieve a more realistic effect without adding too much detail, because once you go past a certain amount of detail, it becomes too much information and it just looks too cluttered. So I was also filling out another request that I received at around the same time as the hooded panda. So in this request, it was that it be an angel flying into a demon's face. So initially I had it sketched out as the angel actually being further away from the demon and the demon looking up towards the angel, but you will see me later on actually change that to more of essentially a straight in your face punch towards the demon. Now, because I was doing a test on this, I did actually pre-paint the face to figure out how I was actually going to go about rendering this. Now I didn't like the results, so I deleted it. I do have the video footage, but it became too long of a video, so I removed that from this video. So you will see the second rendition of the face for this character once the line art is complete. Now as you can see, I start always off with my line art. This just gives me a pretty good idea of what I'm actually going to do for the drawing. It's very important as a stage because I can actually potentially save a lot of time. Now, as I was working on this, because I didn't do too many pre-conceptual sketches and I didn't have all that much of a good idea of what I was going to do, I did do a lot of modifications as I went in this illustration. So you'll also notice that I actually removed the angel where he's located, and I changed actually some very important portions of this drawing so that they fit the entire scenario more accurately. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind is if you're doing your own illustrations, doing a pre-conceptual stage where you're actually doing a variety of different sketches can actually save you a lot of time. Typically, most of my drawings actually take about 6 hours to complete, but because I didn't do any pre-conceptual stage and I did waste a lot of time trying to figure out the rendering process for the face, this drawing actually took 8 hours to complete. So it was essentially an entire day's work. Now this is a more rendered piece at the end though that you'll see. It's more finalized than what you've seen me previously work on this channel. So as you can see, I'm actually trying to plot out some of the details in the face. Now I do want the main focal point to be near the eyes and him looking up, so I am trying to add as much detail as possible in that area first. So once I've actually added that main area, I actually went on to the horns because that also shows a lot of character to this character. So it is important for me to actually figure out properly how the structure of the horns would be structured and render it accurately. Now I am rendering the horns as I would a deer's horn or a ram's horn specifically. They tend to actually have essentially a curved upper portion and then a more flattened portion underneath, so it has a very interesting division in between the horn formations. So I was trying to include this in this drawing, so that's the reason why there's a hard band line to achieve that. I find it really helps give that look of having more of a hardened edge by doing that. Now of course, depending on your lighting, that will modify how you actually go about rendering the horns, so just keep that in mind as well. I'm refining. As you can see, I'm adding some additional shadows to the face. I'm further refining some of the portions there, trying to draw back some of the detail, but also trying to highlight additional detail. I'm hinting at some of the muscle anatomy and the bone structure on his spinal cord because I do want it to be very, very pronounced for a character. So I'm really trying to emphasize that while still helping to draw the information in the eye towards the face. So I'm making sure that the face has the most detail at this point. I did actually quite a bit of research prior to this as well. Um, for this drawing, I actually researched how to properly do portraits because there's actually some interesting techniques you can apply in any illustration if you know some of those techniques. So I looked in some of the traditional media tutorials that I found online, and I actually got quite a bit of good information on that. Essentially, it showed me how to view color in certain areas of the face, whereas around the eyes and around the mouth area, you tend to have a bit more blues. If it's a male character, then you would actually have hints of the shaven area if he's not having a beard. And you tend to have more flesh tones around the cheeks. So there was a couple of tips like that I picked up by doing some research. It was really worthwhile though because I was really able to add those additional information into this drawing. So I've just started on some of the armor design. As you can see, I'm keeping it very basic, but I also don't have any finalized ideas. So I'm trying to keep this as fluid as possible, and I'm trying to just flesh out what I actually want as a structure. Now initially I did start off with this type of perspective, but because I do change his arm location, it doesn't make sense to have the armor facing in that direction, so I end up changing it later on, which you'll see somewhat soon actually. So I'm adding some of the wear and tear to that armor. He is a demon, so he shouldn't have any pristine armor because he's not living in a very hospitable area. So for this reason, I'm trying to show more of a wear and tear on his armor. So I'm just pushing back some of the detail by adding an additional layer on my normal layer. The reason why I'm doing that is because there's too much detail in the spinal cord, and I was trying to focus all the attention towards the face. Now, to further emphasize more of that motion towards the face, I did bring forward the angel character so that he was actually making direct contact with this demon. And that really helped draw all the information to the face, all the action towards it. It really helped bring this piece together by doing that. Now I've just started working on the angel character. As you can see, I'm just adding some basic colors, mostly adding lighter tones to him because he's actually going to be emanating his own light source. And because of this, I do need to keep his tones very cool. And this is once again a very dynamic process for me because I didn't pre-plan his actual design elements at all. So I was actually working through them essentially as I was drawing this. So I was sampling colors. I was also choosing some of my colors via my color wheel and just making sure that everything was flowing together just to make something look really appealing. Now I did realize that at that point that the leg perspective was not correct, so I just modified that slightly. And this is a series of layers that I have actually grouped at this point just to achieve some of the effects that you'll later be seeing. And the benefit of having it all grouped within a layer is I'm able to apply a layer mask on top of that so that when I actually draw in the hand, it does appear to be actually behind the hand. So I'm just adding a light source from the angel. So although I'm making the angel actually emanate all the light, I still need to make sure that the structure is correct. So I actually go back in there afterwards and fully flesh out the additional details to make sure they all fit. Now as you can see, I'm making the energy actually emanate from his hand, and the reason why I actually have this angel's eyes glowing as well as his mouth is this energy is actually internalized and he's actually bringing it forth as he's attacking the demon. So by adding energy and the light in his eyes and mouth, I'm able to really achieve that to show that it's actually coming from his core. Then I've added most of the detail and the highlights to the angel. I do need to actually add those into the character, the demon character, as well as you can see right now, I'm actually trying to get a good medium between having those highlights, but also showcasing the details of the angel. So I'm really trying to show that back leg, but only slightly, so that all you see is the silhouette, but it's still enough so that it reads correctly. And it's achieving that. That is a very interesting thing to do, and it does take some time to do. Working out the perspective on the foot. And as I was drawing this angel, I was actually posing out my own leg to try and figure out how to actually properly draw this. That helps a lot when you're trying to draw something like this, because the anatomy does bend in very awkward positions sometimes, so it's really good to do that. Now I'm just making sure to add the light from the angel onto the demon, as you could just see, and just fine-tuning some of that extra information just to make sure that the angel still pops out from the background and does not blend in too much. Now I've just started on the demon's hand. I do rough it in, but end up actually removing it and replotting it out because I did not like the perspective that I had drawn. So the perspective that I replaced it with is much more dynamic, and I ended up going with that instead, just because it seemed to work a lot better. So I'm going to end up actually fine-tuning some of the perspective in that armor on his shoulder a bit, and also adding some additional highlights onto the arm. Now, I'm not adding too much detail into the arm, because it will be actually mostly in the lit area, because of where the energy is actually coming from the angel's hand. So because of this, I don't have to go overly detailed. It's also further away from the viewer in comparison to the demon's face, so I don't want the attention to be drawn to the hand. I want it to be drawn towards the demon's face. Just working out some of the muscles, flipping back to see the structure and my initial sketch. Fine-tuning some of the anatomy. Still not happy with it. I'm still tweaking it a bit more. And as I'm doing this, I am looking at some reference material. I do have some of my anatomy books up beside me. And I'm just making sure to darken up and add some more of a weathered look to that armor piece so it fits better with the demon character. Adding some additional highlights into the anatomy. And I found that the angel was actually taking up too much of a large area, so I actually ended up shrinking him, and then I had to repaint in certain areas just to make sure he still fit with the background. As you guys can see, I've just added some of the basic lighting, and I'm actually adding the blood from the blow because if you were hit by somebody that was charging down at you from the sky, you would most likely have a really hard time keeping your teeth in place. So I just added the eye in there, and I'm doing some final touches onto the shadows of this character's face, just trying to pop out further some areas and then recede other areas, just to make sure everything looks correct. Adding additional details in that armor, refining some of the edges as well to sharpen them a bit, and just tweaking the overall anatomy and the contrast between certain elements. I did notice at this point that the wings were actually going through the horns, so I fixed that right now. And I just added the final bits of lightning. If you want to have your say on what's drawn for next week's video tutorial, or have some additional questions about my drawing process, please leave a comment below. I will take the feedback you guys give me and try to answer your questions while working on next week's painting. If you want to see some of my previous works, please feel free to check out the annotations on the side of this video or visit my channel for the full playlists. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you and take care.